What's up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well. In this video, I'm going to be going over some updates for the total crypto market, Bitcoin, some information, news type stuff, XYO JASMY, and then at the end, I will touch on something that pertains to attempting to model Bitcoin in order to arrive prediction. But anyways, to go and get it started here, first off, we see this total crypto market chart. I believe I've gone over these horizontal lines in the past. We can see these correspond to the 618 of each of these bear markets that they are laying on top of. We have these two black circles denoting the point in time. For example, August of 2020. Recently it happened January, February of 2024, where we're breaking this, and it represents one of the last things, if not the last thing, and absolutely confirming and affirming that there is bull market has been on its way and there's more of it to go on as well. You can see with these arrows, this denotes the point in time where we can see price coming, encroaching upon the prior all-time highs right here in this area. You can see that we could do the exact same thing with where we are currently right here in this area. So one thing I do want to do is if we actually take the percent move from this black circle to the high, according to my theory, see 754%. We do that, it's also going to put us about right in the middle of this bubble that I've been talking about at approximately 13 trillion for the entire crypto market value in this current bull market, ranging from approximately 10 to approximately 16 trillion, as I've been going over for many weeks at this point. If we take a look down here at the RVI, we can see that we have, as I've said in the past, we've already come up into this pink range, high volatility being released as we went up from the lower portions to this upper portion. You can see now that we're starting to taper down. It's very similar to right here, which again is just lining up with the same stuff that I've been pointing out with this horizontal line, the black circle, the arrow. When we start to make the RVI tops out and it starts to taper off and die down. You can see the bull market continued here, but the RVI was constantly going down to the point that it crossed this median line at 50. And once that happened, that was when this first top was set. And really this was ultimately the ending of the bull market according to the technical structure as far as I'm concerned. And then we came up and we had this tricky double top situation. There was bearish divergences, and we had these two spikes above the median, but again, just factored in the fact that it was a tricky situation with this double top. But after that happened, the RVI went back below, stayed below, and then finally started to cross back above this median right here during the most recent low of around approximately 15.4 thousand, as Bitcoin was then bottoming there. We see the total crypto market also clearly doing the same thing at around 750 billion, then moving back up to a trillion, went sideways along that for many months, January 2023, basically the entirety of 2023, until we finally then came back up. The market broke around 1.2 trillion, Bitcoin's breaking 30,000 and solidifying movement above that sideways range. And so again, basically I think we're seeing the same thing. We're starting to taper off here. What I think is quite likely is we will see something, I'll do it this way. We'll see something more so kind of just along these lines where we'll continue to move up into this range right here as the RVI will continue to do what it did similar to back here and go down throughout the rest of this bull market. And whenever we start to see this RVI solidify trading below this median, that will, again, like it did last time, denote the bull market being over. Moving into here on Bitcoin on the 12-hour chart. I've been posting this chart on my community tab within the last few posts. You can see here this potential pennant or symmetrical triangle. There's been plenty of people within recent weeks pointing this out as a possibility. We see here this red range that I have drawing down to 32%. That goes back to the daily chart that I went over in a past video. But even further than that, again, this range right here, where we see these pink horizontal lines, is going to line up with approximately 40%. It's actually, given the 20 to 40% rule, Bitcoin's drawdowns and bull markets, going back and looking at past history, You can see this is a range around 40% to approximately 43%, just giving room for some wicks and things like that. Even if I go back, let's go back to here. We look at January 2021, you can see this range, the lower bound of it was a major resistance. Then the bull market continued to carry on out. You see right here, support went up to 64, approximately 64,000. Price came back down, fell below it. You can see that it was basically just continuing to bump its head right here. It wasn't perfect resistance right here, but it clearly you can see in these really these three areas right here. More so, especially right here, we rejected, then broke above it, support, continued to go higher, came down, found some local support, landed on it right here, and then that's when Bitcoin went to 69,000, and then it's at the all-time high for that this prior bull market. Again, you can see this major wick right here came down to it. There was major resistance right here, January 2022, February, March, and then right here we had this kind of fake out above it. Eventually came back down, came back up, found rejection in April 2022, and then the bear market really began. This was, see this also roughly lines up basically right in the middle of this entire sideways range that Bitcoin set during the last all-time high, during that double top, and then right here, this area right here would have been the defining moment when you could really start to see confirmation that there's far more downside to go, and that Bitcoin's not going to continue to go up from here higher than 69,000. So I do think that it's pretty clear at this point that there's no denying that the bull market has begun, and the bottom was at 15.4 thousand. Factoring in the 20 to 40% rule, I don't think this is likely, but anything can happen. I personally will not start to think that, let's say that this is right here, this top that we've set at around 73,000 is going to be some sort of local top, and Bitcoin drops lower than 40%. Until Bitcoin loses roughly 40,000 and it starts closing below, let's say 42 to 40,000 on around the 12-hour at lowest, especially the daily and the weekly, then that would be the only point in time when I would start to rethink things in terms of maybe this isn't a bull market, and what we've been seeing is actually kind of something similar to, if I go to this chart right here, June of 2019, and we're kind of, again, so basically just to kind of draw some sort of, we had this double top right here, we've had this bottomed out range, or rounded bottomed out range. We come back up and basically we're setting, you know, a triple top scenario. Let's say you have one top right here, two, and then three, and then we come back down. Maybe we even come back down and we test like 23,000, then things come up and we do something like that. I don't know. It's definitely possible, but I don't think that's really likely at all. I definitely don't think that's what's going to happen, but it can happen. Moving into this daily chart, here we see this broadening, ascending channel that I've been pointing out for a number of weeks. We had this fake out right here that I mentioned. Then I mentioned the likelihood of it breaking back up into it due to a fractal-like occurrence of seeing this same pattern on a lower time frame, which I went over in a past video. And then we came back up, and when Bitcoin topped out at approximately 73.7 thousand, it again was marking the third time in this channel. So right here, we have October, late October 2023, first week of December 2023, and then this third one right here on the 13th of March, finding rejection on the resistance trend of this pattern. And then again, we see another variation of this potential symmetrical or pennant flag, pennant triangle playing out. So I think it's definitely possible. I mean, you see these wicks right here. We could, for example, do something like this and get some short-term rejection right here, come back down, you know, close a candle again right here, but then we see a major wick even lower. Then ultimately it continues to break above and go higher and higher. Let's say that we get some sort of a fake out from this pattern, and making this pattern, we come back down and we come back down and we test this what's been support for this outside of this fake out right here. And then third scenario, let's say we get another fake out, something like this down here. Just take a percent. This drew down approximately 13% once it solidified being outside of this the channel. We do the same thing, starting from roughly about right here. Around 12 to 13% drop would take it to around 50, 53, 52, 51, 50, 50 to 53,000, which is, to go back to this right here, it lines up with this red box again on the 12-hour. Right here, it's going down again, like I said, approximately 50,000 at the lowest. If that were to happen, then from top to bottom, that would be a approximately 30% move, which again is still within a healthy range of drawdowns and pullbacks in a bull market for Bitcoin. You can see, again, we have this yellow horizontal dotted line. This represents the, go back, the highest daily close, then, which was at 68.9 thousand in the last bull market. And this, if it is a pennant triangle, or a symmetrical triangle, it's clearly not symmetrical, as you can tell, but somewhat there, and a number of people are pointing it out, so I figured there may potentially be something here. You can see this, it's been oscillating it, basically using this as its median this entire time so far, which I find rather interesting. If you look here at the RVI, zoom in specifically to this channel that I'm talking about, we can see that the RVI is reset all the way back down to the same levels that price was at when it was at around 40 to 42,000, yet the price is roughly double that, sitting just at approximately 70,000. So this could definitely be an indicator that there's not too much downside. We could just continue to break out from here and the symmetrical triangle plays out, or we could even see some short-term movement down to the bottom of this channel. But I would say that this, to me, is supporting more likelihood for staying within this broadening channel or breaking out above this potential pattern rather than coming down and testing around 50 to 53,000 as I was mentioning. Or again, like I was saying, approximately 40% is going to take price all the way down to around 43, 42, 41,000. That's worst case scenario, but I don't think at this point it's too likely to happen. Now, this chart right here is, I'm not sure, I think I've went over this in my life. It's been about a month since I posted the last video, so I'm not sure what I went over, but just to continue to update this pattern that I have on here so far, it's playing out fairly well. I still think if I were to compare it back to here, we're somewhere right here in this area, given that it just lines up with going back up to the prior all-time highs, because we have not broken that. I mean, we've broken it, we closed above here on this weekly chart, but we're still sitting in the same area. Even on the weekly chart here, we can see we have a yield vector printed at the highest local top at approximately 73.34 thousand. And we see these vector zones right here. I don't think this one down here that encompasses around 30 to 27,000 is viable at this point. Again, this goes down to approximately 50,000, further validating what I was mentioning here on this chart. If we were to see around a 30% pullback, as I mentioned. And then again, I'm still expecting somewhere 180,000 to, I think 260,000 is as high, 250, 260,000 is as high as it could push, but I'm sitting personally more somewhere around $230,000 approximately, 220 to 230,000. We move in here to this monthly chart. We again see each of these bear market fib retracements of this greenish range representing and lining up with every single Bitcoin all-time high going back to the very beginning of price history during the first cycle, or the second cycle at least. According to my theory, we can see with this stochastic momentum indicator down here, I have it set to where each of these bottoms have been right here in the blue, accurately predicting, going all the way back to 2011. We have it right here again for 2015. We look at 2019, again, same thing, and then recently right here, 2022, 2023. And then for the all-time highs, really starts to start right here, February 2017. Whenever this flips pink is when the price is starting to close above the prior all-time high. Same thing happened right here in November 2020. It's the first candle to close above approximately 13.3 thousand. The candle close back in 2017 for the all-time high then, which went up to approximately 20,000. And zooming in here, You can see that we recently just did the same thing. Bitcoin just recently did the same thing. Beginning of March, when we closed this monthly candle above the prior all-time high. The current candle, according to the fractals that I have on here, which again, it kind of really comes back to this daily chart and this 12-hour chart with this potential bullish pattern forming with really, I would say, realistically little downside, especially considering ETFs and other things. That according to this pattern, if we're going to follow the trajectory somewhere into around by end of August, September at latest for Bitcoin topping out in the ranges that I've mentioned, then this month it's going to be quite pivotal, and I think we could push up lowest 90,000. I think 100,000 is a nice mid-range, and I think at highest 130 to 140,000 is potentially where Bitcoin could be at by the end of this month, or maybe by halfway into next month, if assuming that this pattern here, this plays out on this daily, on this 12-hour, and we don't have any drastic downside here over within the next month to 2 months. Moving into the only news-based thing, this is it's 11 days old, end of March. We had the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. He was doing a interview with Fox News. And here we can see BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has been pleasantly surprised by the performance of his firm's spot Bitcoin exchange traded fund, and has reiterated he's very bullish on the long-term viability of Bitcoin. IBIT is the fastest growing ETF in the history of ETFs. Nothing has gained assets as fast as IBIT in the history of ETFs, Larry Fink said in a March 27 interview with Fox Business. Then he said also, we're creating now a market that has more liquidity, more transparency, and I'm pleasantly surprised. I would never have predicted it before we filed it that we were going to see this type of retail demand, Fink said. Again, I mean, it's actually been wild how quickly the ETFs for Bitcoin have grown since they were finally approved around 3 to 4 months ago. Anyways, here to move into XYO. So far, it's come up to roughly the range that I was been mentioning for many months at this point, somewhere around this area right here. Around, I was just saying somewhere around like approximately 2.5 pennies to around like a penny and a half. This range right here would have been a range that could have been hit, and then we could see some sort of retracement. At this point, I don't think it's too likely that it will go back below approximately 0.007. That's also just lining up with the vector control zones right here. I mean, there's possibility that we could come down even here to this zone as well. Should also roughly retest the bear market resistance curve that we saw. But again, like I said, I don't think, also if we look here at the 50 EMA band, it's been tightening up here as well. That would also roughly line up with retesting this 50 EMA. And again, like I said, approximately 0.007. When it comes to the all-time highs, it's still basically the exact same ranges. Nothing's changed so far when it comes to that. As I've said in the past, I think somewhere between $1 to $2 is most likely, and then somewhere around approximately $6 would at highest, but I'm still mainly looking for $1 to $2, and then I think 50 cents will likely be important as well during an upcoming bull run. We take a look here at this XYO to Bitcoin chart. These bear market resistances I've drawn on here. So far, everything's still looking good. We have found a bounce on it. We had this recent local upswing. Now again, we're coming down. I think this is just factoring in Bitcoin, the total crypto market chart, and everything else. This is only, I think, brewing a really perfect storm in order to see Bitcoin, altcoins, and everything else that's viable, that's going to, you know, as a genuine protocol, and it's just not something stupid, even though meme coins obviously, you know, have their time to shine, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's these viable protocols and actual blockchain solutions that are going to have the most value. The one indicator that I do want to update is this MACD down here. You can see that we're finally, I mean, going back to around second half of December of last year, this is when XYO was first reaching a 0 point again. Very important, as I've gone over many videos, talked about, we can see going back here. Once it happened in the last bull market, then things are absolutely parabolic. And again, I think we're just seeing the same thing. It's only a matter of time before one day I come back or you come back to look at this if you're invested into it and you see it's been sitting here, but then all of a sudden it's just going absolutely parabolic towards the upside and releasing all this momentum that is built up during this bear market and seeing this major bullish divergence from June of 2022. I mean, really all the way to July. I mean, over a year bullish divergence for this entire bear market. The momentum has been building itself up in order to explode. Once Bitcoin is at the had made its low, was at its right time in the cycle in order to reverse into a bull market, and then also especially with these ETFs only going to help it with driving Bitcoin higher, which is going to have altcoins follow it. If you look here at JASMY, so the vector zone at this point I think is likely to have any retracement. Also, it's basically similar to XYO. We see this horizontal range right here, which lines up with the vector control zone. This is also lining up around 0.006 to 7, just approximately in that range. Again, it's what I just mentioned here for XYO. Even the charts look, I mean, they look fairly similar on the USD pairs. If we zoom in, we can see, I think it looks similar to Bitcoin and how, I go a little bit, go down to the 2-day. Let's go to the daily. If we look here at the daily, you can kind of see something similar to what Bitcoin has been doing right here on the daily. It almost kind of looks like a McDonald's M, which I find kind of funny. But like I said, 0.006 to 0.007 at the lowest, I think, is where this would retrace to at this point. Again, I still don't really know where it's going to go. I do think this is going to be one of the better performers, as I've said. Right now, we're battling this 200 estimated moving average. Once it starts to break above that, then I think a next area to look out for could be somewhere from around approximately 4 cents up to and this isn't the all-time high, but this local high back here. So approximately 4 cents to approximately 17 cents could be a range. It could just go to the bottom rate, but lower bound of that, so approximately 4 cents. Or it could go to a little bit higher, like I said, to around 16, maybe 17, 18, up to 20 cents or so. And then also, I wanted to show the RVI here as well. You can see that the price has this major upswing. It's been going sideways, whereas the RVI has pretty substantially reset itself. It's sitting right on top of the median right here, which again is I only see this as a bullish thing. We could definitely still retrace, as I said, especially if Bitcoin sees a more of a drastic retracement. But all things considered, my bias is that that's not what is most likely, and I think ultimately we'll just still continue to trade roughly sideways here for JASMY and for Bitcoin until it continues to go higher. Now finally, this guy, I don't know if any of you have seen him on Twitter or anywhere else, but his name is Giovanni. He's a physicist, astrophysicist, and he has this theory that's trying to model Bitcoin, calling it the power law. And what he says here is there are two circumstances when scientists feel very confident about predictions, scientific predictions, not gambling or magical ones. First thing he wants to talk about is periodic systems. They repeat themselves on a regular fashion, so it is relatively easy to predict different aspects of the cycle. He gives examples such as seasons, or the orbits of the planets, things similar. So again, he's talking about periodic systems, which directly is referencing my own phase cycle theory, my Epoch theory that I've been going over on the channel since I started it. This right here was one of the ones I went over recently, where we can see the first cycle beginning right here, July 2010. This is when the price, if I were to go down to the lower time frame, such as the daily, when price really started to print coherent movement. Everything before that was just kind of random and sporadic, no really logic behind movement until around July 2010. And then the first cycle ended June of 2011, a little over a year later. And then when one cycle ends, the next cycle is beginning as soon as that ends. We come down right here, we have each of these peaks. Again, there's 4 of them. So from this this second yellow dot to this third yellow dot, this is really the model, like the example cycle, the second cycle, where you can really see on the higher time frames the structure of it, the 4 peaks. the double bottom you set back here leading into this kind of lightning bolt ABC like bull market. We then have this kind of just diagonal slanted, slow bleed off, rounding bottom bear market into the bull market that's more drawn out. It's like a parabolic straight up movement, but it's just, it's not really parabolic. It just takes a long period of time. So it looks kind of like almost like a valley, as I mentioned in the past. And then again, we have, and in the second cycle, we have our third cycle, and we're heading into the third peak, which would be synonymous to this one back here in 2013 and right here in 2011. In each of these cycles, they are taking longer to play out. The returns are less, and the losses are also less. Which again, if you haven't already looked into this guy's work, something he also mentions as well. It just factors into the what he talks about is the power law and periodic systems. And then the second thing is scale invariance. Or as we explained before, scale proportional, if you prefer this term. That is, for example, how animal physiology scales up, how a building scales up as you make it bigger, and you use this to infer what type of stress they can sustain and so on. You can make very valid predictions on these things just using scaling principles. The growth of a horn is scale invariant, and you can predict its growth and so on, or if something goes wrong. Through this, you can tell that the animal has some sort of illness or problem. There are very precise mechanisms why these systems behave in this regular fashion. And really, one of the most important things he says, summing it all up, is saying Bitcoin is both periodic cycles, which has been a part of my theory, and also scale invariance, which I've talked about in a very rudimentary way. Definitely have not gone in depth as much as he goes in his theory. There's a lot of mathematics, which is, again, factors in what a power law is, and statistics, which, mathematics in general being used in physics and other scientific realms of inquiry. And to finish off what he's saying, this is what the power law theory of Bitcoin claims, and it's the core of its understanding of Bitcoin. It can be falsified with more evidence, but it is a valid theory that is supported by the existent evidence. It is not a scam. It is not an illusion. It is valid evidence. But to kind of talk about the scale invariance a little bit more, so a good way to exemplify this would be through the Fibonacci sequence and the golden proportions. And whenever you think about, for example, like he mentioned, the growth of horns and how the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratios, like 1.618, the 0.382, the Fibonacci retracements people use for trading, lines up with, the development of nature. For example, like the growth of shells and things like that. Also, if you look at spiral galaxies, they also seem to present some form of scaling, like again a scale invariant, like there's some sort of there's these numerical mathematical factors of constancy that are seeming to be applied to the growth of something over a period of time, which is scaling it bigger and bigger. Like, for example, the way that I can point that out here on the chart would be what I've gone over in the past, my recent, more like the last 2 or 3 videos, if I had to guess. If we on the monthly chart, I'll do this on the monthly, then I'll do it on the 2 weekly from this low right here. Again, this is factoring in my phase cycle theory or my epoch theory, which if you're not too informed on that, if you're new to the content, I'll have cards linked at the beginning of the video that have me more going over that more in depth. But to do this, we have right here 6 bars, and if we do the same thing right here, so here we see we have 10 bars. Now 10 divided by 6 is going to give us 1.6, a bunch of 6s, and then ends off with a 7. But we can really start, so you can see that it's approximating the golden, 1.618, 1.66666, so on and so forth until it ends with a 7. But if we go to the 2 weekly, which is where this really gets interesting, which is what I went over in one of the last videos, is we do the same thing here. So if we go from wick low to wick low, segmenting off a specific structure in the growth of my cycle theory, we have 13 bars. Do the same thing here. We have 21 bars, which that just magically, I think, clearly not coincidentally, just happens to be 2 numbers that are a part of the Fibonacci sequence. 13 and 21, both are numbers of part of the Fibonacci sequence. And when you divide 21 by 13, you get 1.6153846, which is a very close I think it's two or three more iterations out in the Fibonacci cycles when it finally starts to land on 1.618. So this is getting close to actually when the Fibonacci sequence really lands on 1.618. I think that's highly interesting. And when I then take this factor, so 21 divided by 13, 1.6154 to round it off, and then we apply it to the entire bull market right here from to Wick High. We had 29, so 29 times this factor, which is, again, I'm linking this into the scale invariance and how, like, for example, we are seeing the golden proportions and the ratios and the factors of scaling that come out of the Fibonacci sequence and are clearly in many realms of nature and have been shown through scientific inquiry. It's what we're seeing here in Bitcoin. And when I do this specific number that we're getting, it will give me the duration for the next bull market, taking from this low, which is going to be 46, and it takes us out to the 2 weeks that will encompass the 26th of August of this year, which, again, with my most recent updates, like I was talking about earlier. So right now, I think the Bitcoin will top out within my valued range that I mentioned, around 200 to 260,000. Somewhere around August, give or take a month. Could lead into September, could happen a little bit earlier, but so roughly we're somewhere around August is what I'm thinking at this point. But this is the last thing that I wanted to touch on. I really thought this was important because when you read what this guy says, he's been working on this for, really since Bitcoin came out. I've been putting it together with the whole power law, and the reason why I wanted to mention it is because he's basically giving a more in-depth explanation of what I have been envisioning in my cycle and how I see it in my head. I just never went to the degree of going through some sort of rigorous mathematical process in order to really flesh out what I've been talking about on this channel. I definitely have had the urges and the desire to do that, but through day-to-day life, having to work, and just also my other intellectual and just other general interests in life, I just don't really perhaps put my focus and time on things where I should. But there was one other thing I wanted to mention about the scale invariance and the whole periodic systems is, like, he has these two main tenets according to his power law and his theory of Bitcoin, and then I have mine, which very rudimentary, as I said, is pointing to these 2 points. But in my looking at his work, I haven't really noticed a specific. I haven't looked at everything he's posted on Twitter, or even on other articles and published papers and things like that he's written pertaining to this topic, or even his other work in physics and other stuff he's done. But from everything I've seen, I haven't seen him specifically define what a cycle is, or even for example, one of the names I use for it, phase cycle theory. There's a cycle and there's 2 phases within a cycle. You have phase 1, you have phase 2, which phase 1 is from this second yellow dot to this blue yellow dot, and then from this blue yellow dot to this third yellow dot is cycle, or those are phase 1 and phase 2 of the cycle system. So whenever I first saw this, there was a lot of relief, not necessarily relief in the sense that I didn't think my ideas were correct. I know that I definitely can be wrong and have been wrong in the past according to my theory, but it's all kind of an in the moment update. Is the way that I kind of look at it. The market's always fluctuating and it's always changing. And really, my main thing is, as I mentioned in past videos, I wasn't sure. No one ever really knows when the bottom's going to be set in until after it happens. If we go back to, I was entertaining, potentially there's a bottom right here, there's a bottom right here, there's a bottom right here, and a bottom right here. So basically, each of these 4 points were points in time in the past on my channel that I was talking about how there's potential here that this is the actual bottom, and then we go up, and then we start to have this bull market, like I've been saying, that is according to my theory. And then finally, on this fourth time, it happened to be the bottom, and so far everything has played out according to my theory, and we're seeing this cyclical decay, things are taking longer to play out. And it's not even just a phase to phase thing or a cycle to cycle thing or like or it's not just a cycle to cycle or an epic to epic thing. It's even within the phases, within the smallest way of breaking down and segmenting off how Bitcoin behaves in its price structure. And we can again see with, like I pointed out right here with this time measurement and this time measurement right here, where we see this Bitcoin has a bottom and then it's building up into the bull market, and we see 2113, which gives us those are Fibonacci numbers, and it gives us a very close approximation of the golden ratio. But anyways, that was all that I wanted to go over in this video. So again, hopefully you enjoyed. Apologies for not uploading for the last month. But I went on vacation and a number of other things that kind of led me away from uploading as well. But anyways, with all that being said, hopefully you enjoy, and I hope you all have a blessed day.